The Laura Ingraham Show.
So 10 to 20 people. Now, I didn't see the entire day of hearings, but did anyone ask, Drew, maybe you saw this, did anyone ask yesterday, have each of these people been deposed? Have they been deposed and asked if they were the people who leaked the information to the media?
There was no follow-up on that, Laura.
Why wasn't that asked yesterday? And a very interesting question that was raised by I don't know who this is writing for Conservative Treehouse, but someone wrote a really interesting piece about the question that was left hanging yesterday, meaning it was hanging but not asked. I shouldn't say left hanging. It was not asked. In addition to that, and I don't believe the question was asked if these individuals, since you know who they are, the only people who had access to the names, and I'm speaking of course, Paul Manafort, Roger Stone, Mr. Page. Those are the only three people who...
See, the main thing, Laura, was that he's not going to reveal a specific person's name. He says, I'm not going to comment on that. So when they asked about Roger Stone or when they asked about Michael Flynn, Comey just says, I can't comment on that. If it's anyone's names, I'm still not going to comment on that. To be fair, he did that for the left and the right.
Right. Well, so who cares? I mean, that's not even relevant. What's relevant is there are individuals inside our intelligence agencies who are unmasking the names of Americans who are under or caught up in an investigation, either the target of an investigation or they are the ancillary target of an investigation. Namely, supposedly Russia was being investigated. They did some counter intel on Russia, whether Russia was trying to get into computers. And then, lo and behold, they just caught up with Paul Manafort or Roger Stone. So the fact that he would mention that, to me, isn't relevant. What's relevant is, were the people who we know who had access to this information, have they been subjected to a lie detector test? And asked specifically, did you leak this information to anyone outside of the orbit of those who have the authority to have this information? Yes or no? Hook them up to the lie detector. We know that they're regularly subjected to lie detectors. If you're working for the FBI, it's random. Okay, it's your time this week. They do that because they want to ensure that folks who are working in the intel community are not spies. So you regularly bring people in for this type of monitoring and this type of check. Well, why wasn't this done? If this wasn't done, why wasn't it done? And I understand all the hysteria over at MSNBC. Joe and Mika are completely off the rails. They're going right to impeachment, basically, over at MSNBC. We'll get into that a little bit. But the only crime that we know that has been committed, the only crime in this investigation that's been going on since last July, the only crime that we know that has been committed is the unmasking of the American names who were caught up in this investigation and the subsequent leaking of this to the press. That's it. Now, don't you think it's also critical that we would have asked both Rogers and Comey if either of them had unmasked the names of the Americans who were caught up in this investigation? Now, this was a point raised in the piece that I just referenced. Drew, make sure that this is up on our Facebook page, because I know people think Conservative Treehouse seems weird. The person who wrote this is very smart. I can tell you that. The person who wrote this is not some neophyte who's just like watching the hearings for the first time. This is somebody who knows either something about how intel works or knows something else about the internal workings of this committee. I can tell you that just by reading this. There was this Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, who is a young Republican. She's a freshman from California. And she's from Albany. I always say California. She's from Albany, New York. Big difference. And she was doing some fairly interesting questioning of FBI Director Comey, and yet in this piece they point out nobody seemed to notice why this was important. I believe we have the exchange. Let's listen.
Since in your opening statement you confirmed that there is a counterintelligence investigation currently open, and you also referenced that it started in July, when did you notify the DNI, the White House, or senior congressional leadership?
It's a good question. Congressional leadership.
Good question.
Sometime recently, they were briefed on the nature of the investigation in some detail, as I said. Obviously, the Department of Justice has been aware of it all along. The DNI, I don't know what the DNI's knowledge of it was because we didn't have a DNI until Mr. Coates took office, and I briefed him his first morning in office.
Okay, we have the next. Okay, let's keep it going.
If the open investigation began in July and the briefing of congressional leadership only occurred recently, why was there no notification prior to the past month?
I think our decision was it was a matter of such sensitivity that we wouldn't include it in the quarterly briefings.
Why was the decision made not to brief senior congressional leadership until recently when the investigation had been open since July, a very serious investigation? Why was that decision made to wait months?
Because of the sensitivity of the matter?
Okay, wait a second. He had said earlier that the regular course of things was to notify congressional leaders and the White House and DNI quarterly. That was the regular course of business. You do quarterly updates. This is what we're doing here. This is what we're doing in North Korea. This is what we're doing. Now, why would he be? He suddenly can't remember when exactly the different branches were notified. It got very loosey-goosey. You look at this, and we're going to, you link it through on our Facebook page. Watch this part of the hearing. Watch what happened in this part of the hearing. He got definitely squirrely when he was asked about this. Now, the counter intel investigation, as I said, and she pointed out, by his own admission, began July of 2016. Congress not notified until March 2017? That's an 8-month period of time. Of course, completely, throwing confusion and more questioning around his statement just a few minutes earlier that it was quarterly. From this piece in Conservative Treehouse, the uncomfortable aspect to this line of inquiry is Comey's transparent knowledge of the politicized office of DNI James Clapper by President Obama. Clapper was used rather extensively by the Obama administration as an intelligent shield, a firewall, or useful idiot on several occasions. Anyone who followed the Obama White House intel policy outcomes will have a lengthy frame of reference for DNI Clapper and CIA Director John Brennan as the two primary political operatives. Brennan admitted investigating and spying on the Senate Intel Committee as they held oversight responsibility for the CIA itself. The first and second questions from Stefanik were clear. Comey's understanding of the questions was clear. However, Comey directly evaded truthful response to the second question. When you watch the video, you can see Comey quickly connecting the dots on where this inquiry was going. There's only one reasonable explanation for FBI Director James Comey to be launching a counter-intel investigation in July 2016, notifying the White House and Clapper and keeping it under wraps from Congress. Comey was a participant in the intelligence gathering for political purposes, wittingly or unwittingly. As a direct consequence of this mid-thought stream of Comey obfuscation, it is now clear, at least to this writer, that Director Comey was using his office as a facilitating conduit for political purposes of the Obama White House. Unfortunately, a slightly nervous Stefanik never forced Comey to go back to the non-answered question and respond by saying, this is how she should have followed up. No, Mr. Comey, there was a DNI, a Director of National Intelligence, in place in 2016. Please answer the question. When did you notify him, Mr. Clapper, and the White House specifically? Then it would get a little ugly because Comey would say he wouldn't want to answer this. So why did you notify Clapper and the White House but delay congressional notification? With all the banter about these hearings and against this slight moment of clarity of purpose, it bears repeating. There is only one known factual and criminal activity currently identified: the unmasking and leaking of Mike Flynn's name to the media. FBI Director Comey states that his organization is, quote, investigating. Fair enough. However, not a single congressman asked him if he is the source of this leak. How can a congressional committee conduct an investigation if they don't know that its primary witness, the lead investigator, is the source of the leaks and was never asked? Wouldn't the first step in this process be to ask him and also Rogers or anyone they know, who's the source of this leak? And have any of these people been subject to lie detector tests on this question, which we know is a felony and which we know occurred? All this other stuff of meetings with Russians and Manafort once represented the Ukrainians, all this stuff is crap, excuse me. But what's not is the unmasking of an American in a counter-intel operation against the Russians. Why would he not answer this simple question? 10 to 20 people within the NSA had the potential to unmask and or leak this information, said Mike Rogers. So is he one of these numbered individuals? Did he know? Wasn't asked. Wouldn't the second follow-up question in a real inquiry be to ask Rogers if he is one of the possibilities with access to that information? Then was he actually the person who unmasked or leaked? If either Comey or Rogers admit that they are in charge of two of the possible sources of leaks for the information that we're talking about, expressly known to be illegal behavior, then what affirmative confidence has either person expressed to Congress to ensure the inquiring body that they personally were not the originating source? You are listening to your healthy radio addiction. Donald Trump arriving on Capitol Hill, try to twist some arms on this health care bill, but I smell a skunk at the picnic. I smell a skunk. And James Comey, I don't trust him farther than I can throw him. I have a good radar on people. I always have. I'm watching this hearing last night. I see a persnickety, snippy, evasive person. I'm sorry, that's just my woman's intuition. And he has really bad hair dye job. If you're going to do a good hair dye job, I mean, maybe I'll give you a little more credibility, but that black hair on him looks ridiculous. And you can talk about Trump's hair, but at least it's a better hair dye job, okay? That is horrifically bad. And that line of questioning, really smart to pick up on that. And kudos to Conservative Treehouse for having done so. We're going to take a break. 855-40-LAURA. This is why you need to bring in outside counsel to question these witnesses, someone who does this every day in court to really get at the nub of the problem. We'll take a break on your healthy radio addiction, 855-40-LAURA. Oh, you're kidding me. The Russians want someone in power who will actually want to have a fresh start with the Russian government. That's a shock. Yeah, that's stunning. I mean, what Russia should have wanted is they should have wanted someone who wanted a bad relationship with them. That would make sense for Russia. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And now tell me, Director Comey, isn't it true that Russia is very nervous about NATO? Well, you probably have people who are more expert than I, but that's true. I mean, no kidding. So you read a synopsis on the skim every day. That's great. These people are, this is a complete embarrassment. You know what's a real embarrassment, though? Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski. That show, just play one of the really bad ones. If you can play 15 seconds of it, James. Now we'll save it. They don't have time. Yeah. Meanwhile, Cabbage Patch president over there in North Korea is playing Minecraft with the United States, blowing up our battleships on a video. That's not funny, actually. It's really serious. But at least Jim Comey, at least he got to show off his hair to the committee yesterday. We'll take a break. A lot more to get to. Don't go away. Someone who's a contract lawyer who comes in and does this every day. And so when Comey starts I can't answer that. Well, wait a second. You just answered this question earlier, which certainly could be interpreted as sensitive information. So why are you picking and choosing what you're revealing? Yeah. On the one hand, you said you keep the White House and congressional leaders other intelligence agencies updated on a quarterly basis about counter-intel operations. And then in the next breath, you seem to hesitate about when you told the White House about this one. Is it quarterly or isn't it? Joining us now is, maybe I just go reactivate my, I have to reactivate my law license. I really think I need to do that. Joe Scarborough is going crazy on MSNBC. I mean, he and Mika are ready to come in and do the impeachment hearings themselves. Joe has practiced law for like 5 minutes, didn't he? So maybe he'll reactivate his license and, he'd go right to the impeachment committee.
Nobody looked at the director of the FBI or the admiral up there and thought, this is fake news. Those two presented themselves in a way. They had facts. They had details.
Hardly.
And it's hard to brush that away.
Oh, it doesn't even make sense. That's not fake news. What does that even mean? Well, you could try to decode the next one.
It made me sad, and I know it made a lot of Republicans in the Senate very sad to see how Republicans on the House committee acted yesterday. That the FBI director comes and actually reports, Mika, that there's an investigation between the White House, the president's campaign, and collusion with Russia. And all most House Republicans wanted to talk about were how reporters got the information to get out to America that their president, the White House, and the campaign team is under investigation.
Joe Scarborough doesn't care about the one crime that we know was committed. Is not interested in that at all. They've gotten this, I don't know, they've gotten it under their skin that, well, they need to be they're going to be the Republican check on Trump. So right along with Lindsey Graham, right along with John McCain, you know, they're going to be the Republican check on Trump. And they have nothing. All they keep saying is, there is an investigation of collusion, potential collusion. It is an investigation that so far has turned up nothing, except to keep a cloud over the Trump administration. Now, who benefits from that? Who benefits from a black cloud being kept over the Trump administration? Well, it keeps Comey in the spotlight. Maybe it's good for him. He can now get back at Trump after Trump's comments about the intel community, which Comey didn't like months ago. Didn't like it at all. Didn't like that. So the black cloud helps the Democrats. It helps everyone who's against the America First agenda. It helps all those people. But the American people are only given and this is where prosecutors, I don't trust the prosecutors. Half the time in this country, if you're investigating, then that's all that that's all that people need to know. You're under investigation. You know how many of these investigations turn out to be nothing? But these investigators and these prosecutors feel like the spotlight's on me. I've got to come up with something. And then they throw in the kitchen sink. Just because someone's a prosecutor doesn't mean they're infallible. Joining us now is James Rosen, chief Washington correspondent for Fox News. He was watching these hearings intently, and he joins us now. James, how are you?
Infallible, and you?
Oh, I thrive.
I know this. I see you.
So tell us what your take was. We were talking about not to go on and on about this. There is a Pavlovian response on the left, and over at MSNBC, got Mika and Joe practically jumping right to impeachment today. And let me just play the soundbite, and let's listen.
There was only one person on Election Day when Americans went to vote that was under investigation by the FBI. Yeah. And it was not Hillary Clinton. And history will look back and ask,
I wonder why,
1,000 times over, why Hillary Clinton was the focus of the FBI investigation and and the news following that, and why the person whose team was actually under investigation when Americans went into the voting booth and selected him as president of the United States was actually the one under
Maybe
investigation.
that's the difference, right?
Your reaction?
Well, I think, with all due respect for our friends Mika and Joe, there are some significant facts that they have either simply overlooked or willfully conflated here. Hillary Clinton apologized for her conduct with respect to the maintenance of a private server and classified information on that server. And her direct conduct was what was under investigation for the great bulk of the 2016 campaign cycle. In the case of Director Comey's comments yesterday, which is what Joe and Mika are referring to, his testimony before Congress, Director Comey said only that he confirmed that the Justice Department is investigating Russian intervention in the election. And as I believe the director put it, any contacts between members of the Trump campaign and Russian officials. Any contacts. He didn't say the contacts. He hasn't even fully established what contacts there were. Moreover, none of that is directed at Mr. Trump himself. He did not say, the Justice Department has authorized me to testify today to confirm that the Justice Department or the FBI is investigating Donald Trump. So when Joe Scarborough sits there and says that Donald Trump was under investigation and he was the only one of the two candidates at that point in the final days of the campaign, that is not borne out by what Director Comey said yesterday. Beyond that, it was an extraordinary spectacle to watch. I spent 5.5 hours of my life on this that I won't get back, Laura. Mm-hmm. What I observed chiefly was the difficulty that even the most seasoned lawmakers and even those well-versed in the mechanics of criminal prosecution, such as Trey Gowdy, the very difficult time they all seem to have holding Director Comey to any consistent, coherent standard for when he would be in a position to disclose facts to them and when he wouldn't. And so, for example, his confirmation that the Department of Justice and the FBI are investigating any contacts between members of the Trump campaign and Russian high-level officials. He said was the decision to disclose that fact was governed in his mind by the fact that it is a unique set of, or unusual circumstances, he put it, unusual circumstances and an extraordinary public interest in the case. And yet he would not disclose to the lawmakers whether, in fact, he would not confirm that he's investigating leaks of national security material involving phone calls from this president to heads of state, or the transcripts of the intelligence collected on Michael Flynn and the Russian ambassador. He would not confirm that, even though Comey's criteria are unusual circumstances and a high degree of public interest. There is high degree of interest in that, as evidenced by the lawmakers' questions about it. Ditto for the unmasking of U.S. persons from these FISA-ordered surveillance methods, which is alleged to have been conducted by some members of the Obama administration. Again, there are unusual circumstances and there's high public interest. But Mr. Comey, Director Comey, was not consistent or coherent in applying those criteria to when he would see fit to disclose something to the lawmakers and when he wouldn't.
James, one of the things that was asked is a question about what they've determined or found about collusion with the Russians and whether this had any effect on the election. Let's listen.
Do you have any evidence that Russia's cyber actors changed vote tallies in the state of Michigan?
No, I do not, but I would highlight we're a foreign intelligence organization, not a domestic intelligence organization.
Nippy.
So it would be fair to say we are probably not the best organization to provide a more complete answer.
So you have no intelligence that suggests or evidence that suggests any votes were changed?
I have nothing generated by the National Security Agency, sir.
Director Comey, do you have any evidence at the FBI that any votes were changed in the states that I mentioned to Admiral Rogers?
No.
That was interesting because, of course, that goes to the heart of the question of whether this election was legitimate or illegitimate, James.
True. Although I think, in fairness, if there was a genuine Russian effort to meddle in the election, and that method took the form of let's say, spreading fake news into the discourse. It would be beyond the means of anyone after November 8 to determine how much of a factor that played in a given vote, and therefore whether a vote was quote-unquote changed. So the Russian effort may not have succeeded in tampering with the actual balloting, but it is quite possible that the Russian effort succeeded on some level in influencing hearts and minds or shaping opinions on the way up to the ballot booth.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, the one thing that we know, the one criminal activity that we actually know of, is a leaking of the name of Mike Flynn, the unmasking of an American in a counter-intel investigation. And yet, I don't believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't watch all 5 hours, I don't believe anyone asked either Comey or Rogers whether the 20 or 10 to 20 people who had access to this information were put under lie detector tests about whether they leaked it, nor were they asked were themselves the source of the leaks.
Well, they made it their practice during the hearing, the witnesses there, the director of the FBI and the head of the National Security Agency, not to comment on specific names where possible. So they would not confirm whether so-and-so had been contacted in connection with this or that investigation. But again, as I say, it seemed to me that Comey was making up Comey's rules as Comey went along to some extent. And the lawmakers, in part because they're at such a disadvantage in holding information, relevant information, were at a loss to try to enforce a more coherent standard on him for disclosure.
Well, again, I think that how can you trust an ongoing investigation when neither Comey nor Rogers themselves were asked by the congressional committee whether they were the source of the leaks? I mean, I know that seems outrageous, and but I mean, I would have asked
Actually, a good prosecutor, a good lawyer, laying what they call in legal terms the foundation, would certainly have spread the canvas that far. That's probably true, and would have made for some good TV, no less.
Yeah. Well, again, if it's 10 to 20 people, these people are regularly put under lie detector tests in the intel community. It usually happens, it's all random, but you never know when you're going to get subjected to a lie detector test. If the FBI knows that information was illegally leaked, then they have the ability to ferret out who did that. And it's not clear that they're doing that at all.
Well, they said that they take very seriously violations of the relevant statutes of disclosure of classified information and publication of it. And, of course, there was that brief moment or two where Trey Gowdy posed a series of questions to the FBI director about whether journalists should enjoy any exemption from the statutes that make it a felony to share classified information with unauthorized persons. And Comey said, no, they don't enjoy any exemption from that statute, journalists, but I haven't seen any journalists prosecuted for it in my adult lifetime. And I dare say, Laura, without resort, I think, to conceit, that the specter of James Rosen kind of hung over the hearing room for that brief moment.
I love it. Oh, that's hilarious. And by the way, on New News Today, which we don't have time to get to, that federal investigators, another leak. Here's another leak. Federal investigators are examining whether far-right news sites played any role in a Russian cyber operation that dramatically widened the reach of news stories. So, now, again, intimidating news organizations, but this is an anonymous source who released this. It's a little intimidation game going on here. James Rosen, always great to have you on. Thanks for sitting through that so we didn't have to.
Take care.
All right, we'll take a break, close it out. So why not have that real debate now? You're listening to Your Healthy Radio Addiction. I'll be on Hannity and Special Report tonight. Make sure to tune into that. On LifeZet, we have great pieces up. Army of bots. What's an army of bots? These are these computer-generated activities online that work to build your digital profile. So companies learn more about you with every keystroke. Every keystroke you put into the computer, whether it's a search for, like, I have this foot problem, right? It's amazing. I put in heel pain yesterday. The second time I get on LifeZet, and all of a sudden, all these heel things show up on my LifeZet page. So I go to lifezet.com. I'm looking at things. Suddenly, it's all the heel advertisements for heel cushion, for plantar fasciitis. It's like, go to this doctor. I'm like, my goodness, that builds that profile of you. Your search engine is following you. Every keystroke is following you. It's a really interesting piece on Life Set. Meet the next George Soros. Ooh, Unilever's Paul Pollan. He's weighing in to push his progressive issues, his causes, globalism. And globalism is under threat. There was a 3.5-hour-long debate yesterday in France. Oh, Marie Le Pen, this was classic. This is when I wish the whole thing was in English or I could understand French. We'll give you the highlights of that coming up. The Gorsuch testimony is going on. Minnie Mouse is questioning Neil Gorsuch right now. Mighty Mouse. Well, she looks like Mighty Mouse. That's not a negative thing. That's Dianne Feinstein. Die-fi. Trump has the tie on with the tape on the back again today. So he has the Scotch tape tie on. Is that his good luck charm, the Scotch tape? Oh, and a happy belated birthday to Barron Trump, who turned 11 years old. I tweeted that out with the pictures of him. I said, cutie pie, Barron Trump. I got like 15,000 retweets already. He's so cute, that little boy. Maria has a schoolgirl crush on him. Oh, I'm going to show Drew something. I shouldn't reveal this. Am I revealing something as a mother? She'll be killing me when I'm older.
Oh, I'm sure she won't mind.
Oh, no, she won't mind any of this. Okay, so Drew, I'm going to show you this. I'm not posting this. But, you find stuff your kids are writing in their room. This is why she's not studying. She's doing little scribble scrabble. Maria plus Barron, heart, hearts everywhere. Red pen.
She had one of those Tiger Beat posters on her wall.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I used to do that, though. 5th grade is when you started really developing crushes on boys. The boys really didn't care much about the girls, but the girls, 5th grade, 6th grade, oh, no, that's when it all starts happening. So she's like, when can I meet Barron? Never. How's it never sound to you? Never meeting him. So anyway, that's as a mother of a almost 12-year-old, I'm starting to deal with this. All right, the border wall that Trump was crowing about. Okay, they're getting all these bids for the wall. This is something tangible. I like to talk about the tangible things. Here are these official specs for Trump's big, beautiful wall. Ideally, it will be 30 feet tall and aesthetically pleasing, at least on the United States side. Well, why should we make it nice on the other side? We want them to not go near the wall. It should be really ugly on the other side. We now have an idea of what Trump's wall is going to look like after Customs and Border Protection released 2 requests for prototypes Friday night. ABC News is reporting. According to NPR, Customs and Border Protection is asking contractors to mock up one of the 2 types of walls, a solid concrete wall or a wall with a see-through component. I don't want any see-through. I want it to be solid. No. Oh, well, you can say little peepholes, I guess, but I don't even know if I like the peepholes. And they can make those into bigger holes. The government wants the wall to be physically imposing in height. Ideally 30 feet tall, though they'd settle for 18. 18's not enough. No way. It must be impossible to climb without a ladder or tunnel underneath, up to 6 feet below ground. It also must stand up to attacks from sledgehammers, pickaxes, torches, and other tools for at least 30 minutes, though 4 hours would be better. That's quite an onslaught. The requests for prototypes also stipulate the wall must be aesthetically pleasing, at least on the U.S. side. This is great. I love this. The deadline for proposals is March 29th. While Trump has put the cost of the wall at $12 billion, a recent MIT study said it'll be closer to, well, they say $38 billion. Trump's proposed budget includes $3.1 billion in funding for the wall. Regardless of the final cost, the wall is on track to be one of the biggest construction projects ever undertaken by the U.S. government. I mean, how many of you would volunteer to work at the wall for like a week? You know how you do service projects with your church? You might go down to, Central America or Mexico, build houses. How many of you retirees out there would volunteer? A lot of you have a lot of experience in building. How many of you would volunteer some time? You know that Coachella festival where everyone goes, or the Burning Man in the desert, where we could turn this into our version of Burning Man. You could have festivals at the wall. You could have booze. You could have ethnically appropriate food. We could have cookouts. We could turn it into almost a section by section. You can turn it into a tailgate event, right, Drew? It'd be like Tuscaloosa on game day.
Yeah, slightly different. But
but you could have it. You could turn it into a big
I would love to go down there. It'd be fun.
My gosh, I'd have a total blast.
Instead of a barn raising, it's a wall raising.
Right, yeah. Exactly. Just like
just
like the Amish do, the barn raising. It's the wall raising. How many of you would volunteer to help? How many of you think it would be a good trade for Americans to learn the construction aspects, the building aspects, the community, the management of the project? I think if these smart people put their minds to it, they could actually turn this into a wonderful jobs project for the inner city youth, disaffected youth, kids who would otherwise be attracted to gang activity. That's a great idea. I think you could turn this into a WPA, a work project. But it could be a public-private event. Why not? How many of you would volunteer to be part of this? 855-40-LAURA. So that's the big, beautiful wall specs. And remember, the immigration issue in general is a growing problem in this country. There was a graphic that I tweeted last night. I'll have to pull it up on Twitter as I speak. That was so shocking on Fox, and they ran this graphic a couple of times. And it was about, part of it I think was about how much immigration costs us. And let's see, here it is. Yeah, I got it. Gruder, thank you. It dovetails to what we're going to talk about, this Rockville High School rape by 2 illegal immigrants. 51% in Montgomery County, Maryland, which is a big liberal sanctuary county, Montgomery County, Maryland. 51% of the school families in the public schools are immigrants. 51%. 14% of the immigrant homes, that means legal and illegal, are living in poverty. Native homes, Native American homes, 7% poverty. They have double the poverty rate. 19 different languages are spoken in the public schools in Montgomery County, Maryland. This is where, in Rockville, Maryland, 2 illegal immigrant teenagers, one from Guatemala, I don't know where the other one is from, 15 and 17-year-old, raped a girl who tried to pull herself away by holding onto a sink, but they pried her hands off the sink, threw her into a stall, sodomized her, raped her. They were arrested yesterday. They should be both tried as adults and never see the light of day, because that little girl has lost her innocence and lost, I can't imagine. But these parents are going to these school meetings. We're going to get into this. These parents have got to start speaking out and speaking up. Your public schools have been taken over. Your communities have been overrun. You never voted for this, yet these politicians put up with this, and they put the welcome mat out for these people. Go after the businesses who hire them. Go after them hard. Big penalties and, if possible, criminal penalties against businesses who should know better. And these illegal aliens should be sent packing out of this country. I'm sick of hearing the dreamer narrative to shield all these people from deportation. These 2 would be called dreamers. Before they were arrested, they were dreamers. But you think this girl is going to have any dreams after what happened to her? 855-40-LAURA. And one of the great groups out there who's supporting Donald Trump's vision on immigration is immigrationpause.org. I want you to go to immigrationpause.org. PAUSE.org. Go there right now. Ask 10 friends to do the same. Put this website on all your social media. It's a great organization that is supporting what Donald Trump is trying to do, to promise to keep Americans safe here at home, this temporary ban on immigration, visas from certain countries, and a smarter approach to immigration. I want you to go to immigrationpause.org. If you haven't written a letter to your senator yet, this will make it really easy to do it. Again, immigrationpause.org. Post it on social for me. We'll take a break, get to a lot more of this. Illegal immigrants raping, sodomizing a 14-year-old girl in Rockville High School, about 10 miles from where we're broadcasting. Don't go away. Illegal immigrants education bill. Is that crazy? There should be no entitlement to education if you're here illegally. No entitlement. Well, the Supreme Court, sadly, delivered a ruling decades ago on this, and unfortunately, until Congress wants to do something, I guess you have to do an amendment to the Constitution. You have to pay for the education of these kids, which is why you got to get them out of the country. You cannot stay in the country if you're here illegally. See, when people say, "Oh, you got to leave the dreamers alone," well, then you're facilitating more problems in more schools and a bigger strain on budgets. It's not their fault. Well, they walked across the border. Some of them came with parents. The parents and the kids have to go home. It sounds harsh. Well, yeah, it's harsh for this girl to have been raped as well. It's harsh for the parents who have to hear it from the teachers who can't teach 19 languages in a public school. It's impossible. You can't teach 19 languages. It's crazy. At some point, people just have to say, it's crazy. I'm not doing it. I don't buy your garbage about calling me racist or xenophobic. I'm pro-American. You're black, you're Hispanic, you're white, you're Asian, wherever you come from, you're here legally, we're for you. If you're working hard, we're for you. If you're an American citizen, we're for you. If you're not here legally, we're not for you. No, God bless you. We hope you do better in your country. Bye-bye. They can't do this. I mean, it takes these little kids getting raped for people to start paying attention. What did Trump say when he announced his presidency? They're coming here and they're raping our people. And they destroyed him for that, right? Yeah, they did. By the way, this case from Connecticut, undocumented immigrant, this was 2 weeks ago, undocumented immigrant accused of raping Connecticut 3-year-old. Is that another hideous case? The Stanford Advocate had a piece out about this. Look at this little creep. 19-year-old Douglas Hus Flores. He was arrested with the sexual assault of a 3-year-old girl. He was supposed to attend an immigration hearing only hours before he was arrested. A Guatemalan native appears to have been living in Stanford illegally. An immigration detainer had been placed on him, as well as a $250,000 court appearance bond following his arraignment at the Stanford courthouse. Hus Flores was charged with first-degree sexual assault and risk of injury to a minor after the toddler was transported to Stanford Hospital. The girl's mother called for an ambulance late Wednesday after the child complained of pain. It was caused by sexual assault. The child was transferred in Yale New Haven Hospital. Barcelo said the family and Hus Flores live in the same residence. What happens when these people come illegally? They hook up with other illegal families or other immigrant families. All they do when they cross the border is they have a piece of paper. I'm a dreamer. I'm a would-be dreamer. Here's my piece of paper. Here's my contact. They release them. They get sent to their contact point. This is what's been happening for years and years and years. And they're given a slip of paper. This is when you have to appear before an immigration judge. They never show up. This guy goes to live with his family, and then he rapes a 3-year-old. That's what we're allowing in our country. It's insanity. Absolute insanity. Let's go to William in New York on the wall. We could find a lot of people to build this wall, a lot of volunteers, a lot of kids' work projects. They could learn how to actually have a trade. William, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Laura. If I were still in my old job, I would be able to get a provisional construction brigade down on the border by about the first week of April. You realize the reserve components of the different services and the National Guards all have personnel, equipment, organizations, and they could solicit volunteers to go down there for 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. They could start preliminary work right away.
Well, and I think this is easily done. Well, there's a will, there's a way. There wasn't a will before to actually enforce the border. This is one serious component. And you bet it should be 30 feet. Shouldn't be any 18 feet. I mean, you got old the guy last week jumping 2 weeks ago, whatever, jumping the fence of the White House. He jumped 3 fences. I'm surprised he didn't try to sell Girl Scout cookies to Donald Trump that night. He was right jiggling the lock on the. Jeez, you can't. Then they went crazy over a guy jumping over a bike stand. The FBI went on lockdown. Some guy jumped over a little metal, the thing you tie your bike up to. He was just having fun. He jumped over the thing. They locked down the White House. So they don't get the guy who's been there for 17 minutes, but the poor biker gets locked down outside the perimeter of the White House. Crazy. During the heat of a presidential election cycle in another country and not have told Congress about it until yesterday or confirm it until recently, at least the so-called Gang of Eight, the top 8 members of the Intel Committee. Very curious. And we now know that 10 to 20 people had access to the name of Mike Flynn and potentially others who were spied on by our government. And this information was leaked. And this information ended up in both the Washington Post and the New York Times. Do these people go under lie detector tests? I would imagine they do regularly, randomly. Joining us now is James Kallstrom, former assistant director in charge of the FBI's New York division. I'm sure he watched parts of this testimony yesterday, and he joins us now. Mr. Kallstrom, great to talk to you, sir. How are you?
Hi, Laura. How are you?
I'm okay. There was a curious question I had after watching yesterday. There was no curiosity about the 10 to 20 people who had access to Mike Flynn's name, and no curiosity about whether or not any of them were subjected to lie detector tests on whether or not they leaked this information, which is a felony.
Wasn't much curiosity about anything, quite frankly. You know, it was a farcical hearing, which I knew it would be, because both Comey and the NSA director really can't answer anything, although Jim Comey did say a few things that, I don't think it's proper for the FBI director to be talking about, quite frankly. But here you got, the New York Times putting above the fold, this story about 9 supposedly high-ranking members of the intelligence community and recently retired people talking about General Flynn. This whole notion of a transcript of General Flynn, which is, begs the question of who unmasked the name of General Flynn, what minimization took place, why is there a transcript, who disseminated it. Director Comey, it was unclear in his testimony who in the FBI actually had the authority to unmask something like that. More than likely, this interception, if there was one, took place by the FBI and then would be disseminated. Who was it disseminated to? Is there an audit trail? Are there written people writing down in a log when they get briefed on things like this? Why is this not being followed up on? Why is there no discussion of it? And why is it impossible, for the Justice Department, i.e. the FBI, to talk about the fact that they're going to conduct an investigation of these incredibly hurtful national security leaks?
Well, there was a moment, James, where Congresswoman Stefanik from Albany, she's a freshman congresswoman, she asked a series of questions of James Comey. I want to play them. Let's listen.
If the open investigation began in July and the briefing of congressional leadership only occurred recently, why was there no notification prior to the past month?
I think our decision was it was a matter of such sensitivity that we wouldn't include it in the quarterly briefings.
Why was the decision made not to brief senior congressional leadership until recently, when the investigation had been open since July, a very serious investigation? Why was that decision made to wait months?
Because of the sensitivity of the matter?
Well, does that make any sense to you? Because of the sensitivity of the matter, I mean...
No, it makes no sense. And apparently, I don't know this for a fact, but apparently the deputy director of the FBI, at a meeting at the White House, told the chief of staff of the White House that basically all this stuff about the collusion with Russia and impact on the election was all BS. And so, there's so many things here, there's so many railroad tracks that don't meet in the middle here, that it's, I'm sure, extremely frustrating to myself, who spent my life in this business. Never mind what the general public would think of the confusion, that goes on for a long, long time. I mean, why were all the felonies left on the table with Hillary Clinton? Why were not the obvious perjuries before the Congress investigated? Why weren't a whole host of things done? Why wasn't the IRS case pursued? Onward and onward and onward, and then, the righteousness of people testifying. And then, of course, you've got the Democrats, which are solid fifth column in this country. That's just disgusting, really disgusting to what this country's all about, in my view.
Well, the idea that the President of the United States was being briefed on an investigation that apparently had turned up nothing, that involved eavesdropping on conversations involving American citizens during a highly charged political campaign, is in and of itself is stunning. I mean, that calls into question, whether this investigation was begun for political reasons, or was it begun because they really believed that Russia was doing something. But during a campaign season, to be investigating the opposition party is quite something.
No, I think it's absolutely out of control. And, the fact that this stuff is in the public domain so easily, and just the nonchalant way that, the government entities are dealing with this thing is just pitiful. And Obama going out the door, allowing the NSA raw product to be disseminated across the intelligence community, it's just an outrage. And it just allows people to have information that may or may not even be factual. And the whole thing is aimed at embarrassing and making it more difficult for this administration to function, and to bring some relevance back to the country vis-a-vis our folk ways and mores and our whole social structure. I mean, it's just out of control.
And there was no question asked of either Rogers or Comey by anyone on the Hill about whether they were the source of the leak. I mean, if you're going to lay the foundation for determining who's the source of the leak, don't you want to at least have on the record, as outrageous as that question might seem, it's a legitimate question. Are any of you the source of the leak?
No, without question. And
no one asked that.
Part is, right, they didn't ask it, and the question is, who had information? It didn't sound to me like Jim Comey. Now, I know he's in a tough situation. I know it's a tough job, but a lot of things are tough. But, there was nothing very comforting to how he answered some of these questions. And, I think he deserves to tell the American people, are you investigating these leaks? If not, the Attorney General needs to be asked that question, because that has to happen.
Well, that's the only crime that we know has been committed. I mean, is that things were leaked to the press? That's a felony.
Right.
We know that for sure. We know that was committed, and there's a limited number of people.
Yeah, there might be another crime there, Laura, and that is if General Flynn was intercepted, as to what all the press releases say. It sounds to me like there's a potential crime right there as to how that was handled and how a U.S. citizen, the interception of a U.S. citizen was handled. I don't know. I'm just that's my conjecture. The whole thing smells to high heaven.
Do FBI agents who are working on these types of matters, are they subjected to regular or random lie detector tests as a part of just the normal course of doing business?
Yeah, I've been out a while, but FBI agents do not necessarily get an annual lie detector test. However, if you are assigned to a particular sensitive matter, you do, and I would be surprised if that isn't the case here, and I'd be shocked if this stuff was coming from FBI investigators. I don't believe it would be. It's just the fact that there seems to be a lost control of how information is disseminated in the government. Too many people know too many things. And I don't believe there's audit trails. I mean, it doesn't appear to be audit trails. I mean, as soon as the director of the FBI briefs the Attorney General on something, who knows where it goes? It goes to the National Security Council, goes to the White House. Who knows how many times it's repeated? And I think they've lost control of the process. And it's just a crazy thing. Why would Donald Trump think he's wiretapped? Well, he's read it on the front page of the New York Times that he was. I mean, the whole thing is, cars passing in the night on different lanes. I mean, it's just, it's not comforting that we have a handle on this stuff.
The warning yesterday, Devin Nunes said during the hearing, there is a big gray cloud that you've put over people who have very important work to do to lead this country. The faster you can get to the bottom of this, it's going to be better for all Americans, Devin Nunes said yesterday. That's exactly right, is it not? I mean,
yes, it is, but there needs to be some kind of a methodology and some sort of an impetus in the government to make that happen faster. I mean, he's been investigating, the FBI's been investigating this Russia thing since July. I don't know. It's very, very disturbing to me. I think the new Attorney General really has to look at this whole thing and look at how this type of information is disseminated, who needs to know about it. That list has to be minimized. That whole thing with NSA needs to be reversed if it hasn't been reversed already.
And also, Comey also, in that questioning with Stefanik, Congresswoman Stefanik, the final call on withholding the existence of this investigation from top lawmakers is typically made by the head of the Bureau's counterintelligence division, not the FBI director. That's what was also said. So he was trying to, because obviously it was very strange that Congress wouldn't have been alerted to this. I think most of them thought Hillary was going to be elected. I mean, I'm just speculating. Right. Hillary was going to be elected and this would just all go away. But in the event that Hillary wasn't elected, then they could keep the home fires burning on this investigation. That's again, if I were playing Columbo here, that's what I would think.
Right. I'm glad Trey Gowdy's on this committee. I mean, I thought he did a great job, and the congressman from Florida was good too. But something different has to happen. I mean, that committee knew all the answers to all those questions. The people that have sat in the closed briefings, know all this stuff, and I'm sure the FBI director has told them things that he refused to tell the general public. And I understand how some of that is. But this is not comforting, as I said before. Sorry to be redundant. It's not comforting to the general population, that has to have full faith and confidence in an agency like the FBI and the Justice Department, and the Congress for that matter, when you just see basically a circus take place. And, a few things might have answered some people's questions, but very, very little.
Right, and then
so I don't know what the purpose of. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The regular person out there following these issues, they only see collusion, Russia, Trump. I mean, that's the sad thing about it, and the way the media
without
report.
Question. Yeah, I mean, I'm in the supermarket line, and I just ask people. I like to see how people, what they know about things and how they think, and that's exactly how they think. This is all a mess. That people are all basically, just spinning around like tops, and they're not doing what they should be doing here, to maintain what's going on. The Justice Department, I realize he doesn't have his senior staff over there, but they're sort of quiet. I don't hear anything coming out of the Justice Department on these issues, and these are critically important issues.
And now a new leak came out today, Mr. Kallstrom, yet another leak that federal investigators are examining whether far-right news sites played any role last year in a Russian cyber operation that dramatically widened the reach of such news stories that favored Trump's presidential bid. So now, because
can you believe that?
I mean, but this is now they're trying to intimidate like people running websites, but. Well, you helped Trump, as if like the Washington Post, the New York Times, the LA Times, Boston Globe, Chicago Tribune, they all weren't working 24/7 for Hillary. I mean, come on.
Yeah, if I had to assess blame for all this stuff, I mean, the Republicans in the Congress, bar a few, I think are just
they're pathetic.
Absolutely
inept. I completely agree with you. They're pathetic.
It's just pathetic that they can't have some
cojones.
Cojones. Coalesce on some issues that are critically important here. I don't say that from a political standpoint. Right. I say that for what's good for the country.
They're sick of it.
I mean, it's crazy.
No, James,
it's absolutely crazy. The inmates are running the institution largely.
James Kallstrom, former assistant director, the FBI New York division. It's always great to talk to you, get a common sense view of how things should be. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll take a break. Remember, I'll be on Hannity and Special Report tonight.